Hello everyone, welcome to TFT-10 for Target 21 aspirants. We hope you are doing well and your studies are going smoothly. I'm sure you are having initial hiccups, but gradually you'll get hold of sociology. We are reading paper 1 and we have completed topics 1 and 2, which was sociology the discipline and sociology as science. Now we are reading the third topic, which is research methods and analysis. And today we will be doing subtopic B, which is techniques of data collection. Okay. The topic that we have selected for today is the primary sources. Let's recap what we did in the last lecture. We studied about quantitative methodology. In the quantitative methodology, what did we study? We studied about positivism, experiments, field experiments, then comparative method. We also studied about qualitative methodology, and here we studied about Weber's social action, then symbolic interactionism, phenomenology, and about feminists. Now this was something new. These three we had already studied before. We also studied that when sociologists have to select an area to study, then they are influenced by multiple factors. What were these factors that we studied? For example, government funding, then the values of the researcher, then the trending research topics, then practicalities like time, money, access. Then the next topic that we studied was about ethical issues. In the ethical issues, we studied 3 points. The first one was about informed consent. When the researcher had to explain about the research to the participants who would first agree to take part, and then the researcher would start his or her research. This was to avoid invasion of privacy or deceit. Then we studied also about confidentiality, because suppose the researcher was supposed to keep the data of his research or the people who were involved in the research confidential. For example, if they were sex workers, or if he or she, the person, was a transgender and wanted to keep the sexuality confidential, then what would the researcher do? The third point, which was the ultimate aim of ethical codes, was to avoid doing harm and doing good. That means minimize risks of harm to participants or actively promote their well-being. For example, we studied about the domestic violence studies, where the researcher might have to consider how he or she can minimize the psychological trauma or help the victims escape from violence. We also prepared a glossary of difficult terms, or the terms which we will come across quite often. These were, for example, variables, reliability and validity. These two terms have to be written in some corner of your journal, sociological journal. And please keep updating the list, and I would suggest that you please prepare a personal glossary of sociological terms. It is going to help in your exam as well as in broadening your thinking. Today we will be studying about the techniques of data collection. The techniques depend on the sources. For example, there are certain techniques of data collection for if they want to go for primary sources, and there are certain techniques if they want to go for the secondary sources. Now, what are these primary and secondary sources? Primary sources are those sources where the data is collected by sociologists themselves. Okay. In the secondary data, there is a pre-existing source of data. You must be familiar with certain reports, annual reports, NSSO. These provide a good research material or a good source of data collection for the sociologist or the social researcher. Next comes the choice of method. How to choose a primary research method. Just like we saw that in choosing a particular topic or area of study, similarly, the choice of method may also be influenced by certain factors. What are these factors? First one is funding. For example, it is easier to fund quantitative methods. Why? Because here the material which is required to test using quantitative method is cheap. You don't have to spend much. Therefore, there will be people who will be eager to fund the sociological or social research. The next comes the nature of the topic. This will decide what method will be used to conduct the research. For example, if in the topic answers are not to be that much elaborate, then what happens? A person can go for a positivist method. But if the researcher wants to know in depth what is the emotion of the person under study or person who is under observation, then if he requires a descriptive sort of answer, then he or she will have to go for interpretive approach. The another point will be the approach of the researcher. The person, the sociologist, may be inclined towards either positivist method or interpretivist method. So accordingly, he or she will decide, no, I am going to go for this particular method because I lean towards this method. I am more inclined towards this thinking or philosophy. We studied about reliability and validity, and I had also said that if you want a study to be reliable, then you should go for quantitative method, and if you want it to be valid, then you should go for qualitative method. Qualitative means it will give a real picture of the social reality, and quantitative means it does not matter which researcher is conducting the experiment, he or she will get the same result or observation. The next factor would be time, money, sample size and access. If I have less time, I might prefer a quantitative method. If I have less money, I might prefer a quantitative method. Similarly, for sample size, I might prefer another method which we will be studying subsequently. And if I don't have access, then also the method will differ. Now, we will study about the 4 types of validity. This was given by Bryman. First one is measurement validity. You remember, validity means the method which is going to give a clear picture or very accurate picture of the social reality. Mostly used in qualitative methods. So, what happens in measurement validity? It measures whether a particular method really measures what it claims to measure. Any method, that means it is a kind of test. Measurement validity test for a method. For example, if a method is being used to measure the sex ratio or about female education, then does it actually reflect the reality? Does it actually show that yes, the female enrollment ratio is dropping or the female sex ratio is dropping, or there is an increase in female infanticide or feticide. So does the data or the experiment show the reality? That is the question. Does it matter? Does it measure? Then there's a new term which is internal validity. Here it is concerned whether a causal relationship is real or not. You remember about causal relationship we studied in positivist methods? Whether X leads to Y. Whether Protestant ethic is a cause of capitalism. Right? So what does this test do? This test will determine whether what you are stating, what the researcher is saying, that okay, X leads to Y or Protestant ethic leads to the spirit of capitalism, does it reflect what is the reality or not, whether it is real or not. Next comes external validity. Okay, here it tests whether results can be generalized or not. Can we come up with universal laws? That means, let us say the experiment that we conducted was true for 2-3 cases. Then we want to see whether we can apply it to n cases or not, whether this generalization is possible or not, or just sometimes the researcher says that it is possible, that yes, for n cases it will happen, but then we come to know that it is wrong. The next one is ecological validity. Ecological setting means the surrounding here. So here this means whether the social science theories, they hold true in everyday settings or not. Whether what we are studying, that means we are seeing the practical aspect. Like theoretically it has been proved, but whether it is possible practically or not, that is tested by this ecological validity. Next comes sampling. You may have heard about sampling every now and then, and even non-economist students, you may have heard, and if you haven't, then this is the time to learn about sampling. What is sampling? Let us assume that I am a social researcher, sociologist, and I have been assigned a task to go to visit a school in a remote area. And I have been told that you need to study or find out about the children, about the students who are studying there. Now what do? There are 100 students, and shall I go and interview each and every student? Then that will be a humongous task. Plus, I don't have that much of time and resources also, nor do I have that much energy. So what is the solution now? So what will I do? I will take a sample. Now what do you do when you have to take a sample? I go to the admin department and I found out that there are 50 students in the primary section, 30 students in the secondary section, and 20 students in the higher secondary. And I have to study students from each category. So what do? I take 5 students from primary section, any random 5 students. There is no bar on that they should be from a particular caste, creed, color, gender. No bar. I randomly pick out 5 students. Similarly, I pick 3 students from secondary standard and 2 students from higher secondary. So total I have 10 students. Now you will see certain similarity. What is the similarity here? Here the ratio that I have chosen, or the percentage, is same. So 50 student is 50% of 100. 50 by 100 into 100 is 50%. Similarly, 5 is how much percent of 10? It is also 50%. Right? So this much is 50%, 30%, 20%. So in economics or in statistics, this is how we do sampling. That means we ensure that the percentage of the sample of each category is same as that of the population. The total children or total students represent the population, while 10 students, they form the sample. Now any observation that I make about this sample is going to hold true, or I will extrapolate this, or I can generalize, you can say. I will generalize about the larger population. So the sample is going to reflect the population. This is known as sampling, and it is one of the building blocks of data collection. Next is types of sampling. What are the different types of sampling that we are going to study? And you should remember that this topic is factual. You need to memorize a lot, but there's no way out, so you will have to read again and again, and you will have to revise. The first type of sampling is random sampling. As its name suggests, here every sampling unit has an equal chance of being chosen. What does this mean? For example, here I chose 5 students. Every student had an equal chance to be selected, and that is why it was a random sample. That same random sample is seen here. I can choose, for example, there are 10 balls. I can choose any one. It does not matter. I can choose this one, this one, this one. I have to choose 5 balls. So every ball is same for me, and I can choose any ball. I am not biased towards any particular ball or any particular sampling unit. Then that sample which will be chosen will be known as random sample. Here the only condition is that I should choose a large sample so that I can get a clearer picture about the population. If I choose a very small very small sample, then I will not be getting the real picture. So this should be large enough. In this method, we use probability, statistics and probability, you must have heard, to choose the sample. This is very important and it is very tough too, but that is what a researcher has to do. The next one is stratified random sampling. What happens in a stratified random sampling? That is what I did when I divided the school into 3 categories: the primary, secondary and the higher secondary. So I created certain strata, stratified it into groups according to important variables. The variable can be anything. For example, it can be class, gender, ethnicity, anything that a sociologist chooses. So it makes his or her job easier, because what happens when you divide people into certain categories, then you can even take a smaller sample and you will get a genuine observation or result. It will be closer to the reality. What is the difference between random and stratified? In random data, what am I doing? For example, I have to study those 100 students. I am taking 10 students, random students. I am not worrying about whether they are from primary section, secondary or higher secondary. But in stratified, what am I doing? I am dividing those 100 students into 3 categories. That means into 3 strata. And then I am choosing particular number, like from here 5, 3, 2. 5 from primary section, 3 from secondary and 2 from higher secondary. So I am being very specific, and that is why even if I take a small sample, I will be getting a very genuine picture or closer to reality picture as compared to a random sample. This is because in any observation, the more specific you are, the more closer to reality you will be, right? And so even a smaller sample will give me an accurate result. The next type is quota sampling. Here, how many people with particular characteristics are to be studied is fixed. For example, if I have to study about the race of the people in a particular community, so who is black, who is white, who is Caucasian, or any other categories, so I have a certain limit. I can take only 5. I can take only 3 from white, and I can take only 2 from Caucasian. Okay, so once that limit crosses, I cannot take 6 blacks. No, this one is fixed. That means the quota for each category to be studied is fixed. But here there is a problem. What is the problem? Some people may be unwilling to disclose that they belong to a certain group. So if people do not disclose, or they give false assertions that I am from this particular category, but actually they are from this category, then the result which I will get will be distorted. You should remember all the negative aspects also of each method. Quota sampling is mostly used in opinion polls. Now, opinion polls are everywhere, you must be seeing. In any news or in any major controversy or any step that is taken in the social media, you will see opinion polls. But the result depends on the honesty of the people, of the person who is voting. If he or she is not honest, then you will get a distorted result. The next type of sampling is multi-stage sampling. Here, sample of a sample is taken. For example, if I have to study 15 people and I take a sample of 10 people, right? First stage. But if I don't have that much time to even study 10 people, what do? From these 10 people, I am going to select finally 5 persons, and these 5 persons I will study. So therefore, this sample is actually a sample of a sample. This is sample 1, this is sample 2. So S2 is a sample of S1. Sample of S1. The advantage is that it saves my time and money, but the disadvantage is it is less genuine, right? So this is the disadvantage. Negative, this is the positive. The next type is snowballing. Remember, I told previously that suppose a researcher does not have access to the person or people he or she wants to study, then he will accordingly choose a research method. This access part is going to be important in this method. What happens here? Suppose I am not in touch with the people. I am going to study the tribals of a particular area of Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and I cannot reach them. I can only reach one person. So how am I going to study them? So that person, a member of a sample, puts the researcher in touch with potential members of the sample. So that person is going to network, you can say, like today. We go for networking, isn't it? Similarly, they will also network with people of their tribe, and they will ask them to contact me perhaps, and those, let's say 5 people, some A person is there, I can contact him only, and that person brings 5 more people from his tribe, and I will study A plus 5. So you will say that, okay, this is very easy. You don't have to go anywhere. Just choose 5 people. And that also you don't have to do because the A person is bringing. So study them and the result will be there. Isn't it? But here there is a catch. There's a point that you need to remember. What is this point? Here those 5 people or those 5 persons that Mr. A is bringing to me is selected by whom? Am I selecting them? No. He is selecting those people. Therefore, it is not a random sample. So, how can they represent the population? When something is specific, I am choosing some 5 people on the basis of, I don't know, maybe my biases or prejudices, then they may not fully represent the population that I am going to study. That means the tribals of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Therefore, they are less than representative. Now, the last method which we are going to study about sampling is non-representative sampling. Now, usually what happens in sampling, we have a population. We want to study about that school. So, we choose a sample. And this sample will is going to represent the population. A sample will always represent the population. That is why we choose the sample. But here you can say it is just the opposite, a non-representative sampling. So what are we actually looking for? Here what are we doing? We are choosing specific members and with specific characters. Why? Why are we doing it? Because perhaps we want to falsify a theory. Some researcher, he or she, XYZ, they gave certain theory A. I want to refute that theory. I want to bring proof that no, the theory which he or she came up with is wrong. So what will I do? I will try to find certain exceptions. Why? Because I want to falsify. I want to prove to everyone that his or her theory is false, is not universal, cannot be applied everywhere. So I will choose a certain sample which will have the characteristics which is exactly opposite to that mentioned in this theory. The second point is that if I want to find the key informants. Informants are those people who provide information. So if I want to know about the social life of a particular place and I am unable to find any source, so I will try to find certain informants who will give me information. So actually I want to study what? My sample is social life. I want to study about social life. I don't want to study about these informants. They are not my sample. So they are non-representative. But I am using them to study something social life. Okay. The last point is convenience sample. They may or may not represent the population which I want to study. But why am I approaching them? Because I don't have much time. I don't have that much money for the research. So we have studied about all different types of sampling. We will come to the next method, which is next technique, that is case studies. You must have heard about case studies. Every now and then we study that. Okay, in sociology you must know about case studies. What are these case studies? This is a very specific method because we study a single example of something. Why do we do it? Because we want to understand it in depth. It gives a more comprehensive understanding because we study every aspect of that particular thing. For example, if I want to study about child marriage, then I will go to maybe a village and there some village has child marriage every now and then. So I will take one particular case of one girl, let's say, who is to get married now, or maybe she got married recently. So I will take her case study. That means I will go to her, probably ask questions to each and every member of the family, and then I will try to understand the background under which the marriage was fixed, why it happened, whether the girl was married, what is her mental condition now, what is her educational qualification now, is she willing to study, how is her relationship with her husband. So I am studying each and everything, therefore it is a case study. Usually you will see that most of the sociologists, they go for case studies because studying one case in depth gives them a clear picture of what might happen to other cases also. Case studies are also used when I want to falsify a theory. Someone has given a theory and I want to bring to them a case where their theory does not hold true. So I will take one case and I will study all its aspects and I will say that no, your theory is not valid in this particular case. I can also perform case studies to develop a typology, a new classification of any particular event. I can do it. For example, Durkheim gave 4 types of suicides, and let's say another sociologist, he or she wants to come up with another typology of suicides, let's say type 5. Then first they will go for case study. Now what is the disadvantage? Disadvantage is that you cannot generalize from them. If you want to generalize, you will have to go for multiple case studies. You cannot generalize from one particular case study. Also, another disadvantage is that suppose you have conducted a case study, then it will be difficult to compare the findings of your case studies with that of mine. You might have made different observations and I might have made different observations. So comparing 2 case studies by 2 different researchers is difficult. Next method is that of life histories. It is actually the case study of one person's life. For example, it may be in the form of, let's say, autobiography of famous people. Then we can know about their thinking, their perspective, their upbringing, their education, their research, everything we come to know about this case study. We also know about the individual's point of view. How would he or she react in a particular situation? That is derived from their life history. Needless to say, it is quite rich in detail. But why do I need to study one particular person? Isn't it? I am studying society. I want to know about people. So why will I study one person? Because it will help me in generating hypotheses. Studying them would give me an insight and I will come up with a hypothesis that okay, this particular person from such and such background has so and so characteristics. So most probably such people have these characteristics. So this will be my hypothesis for my research. For example, some feminists think that life histories can be used to help women understand their own situation and perhaps change their lives. For example, discussing domestic violence may help a woman decide to leave a violent partner. So here comes life history. Also, life histories of people are different from one person to another. Therefore, when we gather knowledge about different people's experiences, then our source of knowledge broadens, right? It keeps on widening and it can give us insight about human behavior, social reality, and one by one we are able to study the whole society. The next method is pilot studies. Here, let's say I have to study all the people or in a census, for example. Okay. A teacher has been assigned a job and she has to conduct a census of a particular city. Okay. Now, what does she do? Does she start going and studying people, knocking at different doors? She might decide that no, I will divide the city into, let's say, various areas. Okay, A1, A2, A3. Now in area 1, she will again divide it into certain localities. Okay, and what is she going to do? She will choose a particular, from those localities, one locality she will choose and she will conduct the studies. That means let's say the economic status of the family. Okay, so she will choose 4-5 families and then she will note down every detail about the family condition, about their income source, about how many people are employed, how much is their expenditure, saving, everything. So here what is she doing? She is conducting a small scale primary study before conducting a bigger study, right? So when does this come helpful? How does it help? If I have to design a scheme for the entire city, or I have to design a research for the entire city, then when I perform a research in that small area, then I understand about the difficulties that I am going to face. This is known as feasibility. Is it feasible? What kind of problems am I going to encounter? So accordingly, what am I going to do? I will make my observations, I will jot down, and then next time when I go for the another area, I will be better prepared. I will have better questions to ask to the family members of each locality so that I can get a proper feedback, data, and hence an accurate census. For example, if I want to go for socio-economic census, or if I want to go for audit, any social audit of any government program, I can go for pilot studies. So it is quite useful in government schemes. The next type of technique of data collection is social surveys. You have heard about social surveys. Now, what are the specific characteristics of social surveys? They are large scale studies. They collect standardized data, right? So you should remember these keywords. It is large scale and they will have standardized. What does standardized means? Not random. They are fixed that okay, I have to collect this data from people. So these things are fixed. I cannot randomly go for one piece of information from one candidate, another piece of information from another candidate. No. The data that I have to collect will be quite standardized. It will be fixed. And it is mostly about larger groups, and the researcher has to carry a questionnaire. For example, if a researcher or let's say an marketing or MBA graduate, he or she has to find out what type of face cream females of a particular college are using or applying. So the researcher or sociologist will have a questionnaire, a set of questions about all the cosmetic interests of the females. Let's say there are 10 questions. Those 10 questions are same for every female candidate, and the researcher will go and distribute it to the females and then come back with the feedback or the answers. There are 3 types of social surveys. First one is when I want to collect only facts. So there will be a place to write down description only. Second one, if I want to know about their opinion. These are known as attitude surveys. And the second one is when I want to test certain theories. These are known as explanatory surveys. The next method is questionnaires. What is a questionnaire? As evident from the name, it consists of questions. A series of questions, written questions. Now, when a researcher gives the questionnaire to someone and he or she is standing there to guide the person, then that survey or that technique of data collection becomes a structured interview, because there the interviewer is standing with the plus the candidate. So the interviewer is kind of guiding. There is an interview bias. The next type is postal questionnaires. So here we post questionnaires to different people, but here the response rate is very less because some might not choose to reply, might not revert. The next point is telephonic questionnaires. Here also the same thing. I may or may not be able to reach out to everyone. Now there's an important term that you should know. In questionnaires, what happens? Here the questionnaire is about a certain concept. For example, if a questionnaire is about educational achievement, about the religion, intelligence, then what is happening? The researcher thinks that education, religion or intelligence is important enough for him or her to come up with a questionnaire. So this concept is known as operationalizing concept. That means turning concepts into questions. I am taking the concepts like education, religion and intelligence and I am turning them into questions is known as operationalizing. Now what is the problem here? The problem is that the researcher is imposing his or her own meaning on a concept. They are choosing which questions to ask, and this method or this process, I would say, might not agree with the respondent's meaning. What does this mean? For example, the researcher is studying intelligence. Then the respondent or the candidate who I have chosen, they might not see intelligence as how I see them, right? That means our conception or our understanding of these concepts may be different. That means different point of view. I might have a different picture about intelligence, while the person who I am studying, he or she may have a different point of view. But the questions that I put forth, I think that, okay, these questions 1, 2, 3, 4, they define intelligence. But according to that person who I am interviewing or whom I have given the questionnaire, he thinks it should be some other XYZ. So here this operationalizing of concept is backfiring. It is proving to be disadvantageous. Now questionnaires can be of 2 types. One is open-ended. That means here the respondents, they have to answer it in their own words. They can write what is important to them, they can express it any way they like. But what is the problem here? Difficult to quantify, because this is too much subjective. But I am a researcher. I have to come to a proper conclusion. How do I quantify it? How do I categorize it? In which category should I place? That becomes difficult. That means coming to a conclusion becomes difficult when people say anything that they want in a question type, in an open-ended questionnaire. Also, the interpretation required is huge. Now, even though it is difficult to quantify, I have to code it. That means I have to put that answer into certain categories. So what I am doing here, I am limiting that answer to this category only. Maybe his or her answer, the answer of the person that I am studying, does not fit anywhere, but deliberately I will put this answer in somewhere here, like this I will put. So I am coding it, which is distorting the picture. It is not giving me a clear picture of what I want to study. So what happens if I choose a fixed choice questionnaire? It is easy to classify, that means categorization is easier to quantify. This is opposite to that of open-ended questionnaires. But what is the negative point? Here the candidates, they have a limited choice. That no, answer has only 1, 2, 3 points. You have to choose between 3 points. Even if you don't agree with any of them, still you have to choose one, right? So it is a fixed choice. It is not open-ended that you can write anything that you want. I can explain it using a mains and prelims question. For example, in the prelims you have fixed choices A, B, C, D. Even if you think that okay, no, none of the answers seem to match, but you have to choose the best possible choice. That is it. Example, in decision making questions, you have to choose the best. You have no other choice. You cannot say that no, A, B, C, D, I don't agree with either of them and I would rather go with some other answer of mine. No, it is fixed and you have to go for it. So that is why it will come under fixed choice. But what happens when you are writing mains? You have the freedom to write in your own words. But here also there is a problem. For example, there is a candidate A and there is a candidate B. Both have scored 10 marks out of 15. Okay. But does this mean that the content of their answer is same? Content A, content B? No. Isn't it? So I am coding the answer of A as 10, similarly B as 10, but they may not be same. The content will differ. So it is actually what? It is an open-ended questionnaire kind of thing, and where I am coding it. It is an example of coding. This is known as coding. So you can easily apply it to your civils preparation. And the last point for fixed choices, it is reliable, but it lacks validity. Reliability, you know, it is used for quantitative methods, but when it is quantitative, then the reliability will reduce because it will not show the real picture of a clear picture of the social reality. Because here you are limiting the choices of the answers. When you limit the answers, then how can they show the true picture? What are some of the advantages of questionnaires? Here, large amount of data can be collected quickly. Okay. Also, there is little personal involvement by the researchers. This is minimal, and here the amount can be very high. It can be done very quickly. Also, access to subjects is easy. In the questionnaires, you simply have to go and distribute the questionnaires. You can also post, you can also email. In today's world, it is easy to quantify the results. Okay, Quantify means you will put it under certain categories. You can correlate, okay, X, whenever X is there, Y is there, so there must be a correlation. You can also go for comparative analysis. You can compare different answers because all the questions are same. So candidate 1, candidate 2, if you want to compare, you simply have to go for their responses, their answers. Also, if you want to replicate or reproduce this experiment, you simply have to distribute the same questionnaire. Replication is also easy. Another point is that they are useful for straightforward questions. Okay, if you want to go for descriptive, then this might not be the right choice. But there are certain disadvantages also. First one is that how the candidate interprets those questions will differ from one person to another. Okay, different answers may not reflect real differences between respondents. If someone is answering, the C1 is answers in a particular way, C2 is answering in a particular way, does not mean that they are different, does not always mean that they are different. It may simply mean that they have interpreted the questions differently. That is why they are giving different answers. The second point is operationalization of concepts. Here the researchers assume that they know what is important, that they know the particular features of the subject under study, but this might not be the same as thought by the candidate. Candidate may have a different opinion, the candidate may have a different point of view about the subject under study. Then a person, the candidate may lie, they might not remember things clearly, or they might portray a different personality while they are writing the answers. Maybe they want to show that they are very kind, so they will falsely write every answer which will point towards kindness or maybe generosity. They don't want to show that in reality they are very stingy. They don't want to spend money. But in the questionnaire they have written very cleverly that okay, I am a very kind person. Though this is giving a false picture. The questionnaire has another advantage, that it does not promote Verstehen, which was given by Max Weber. Understanding. Rapport building is not there because I do not have time to go for understanding and mutual relationship building. I simply hand over the questionnaire and the candidate fills it. I also spend very less time in interaction. So there is no bonding. And the coding, which mentioned before, that it actually distorts the picture of the social reality. So these are the points, or these are the methods that we have studied from primary sources. Okay, please read Haralambous and Holborn, the Blue Book, right? Chapter on methodology. You will do the primary sources till questionnaire. Don't do all the methods, do only till questionnaire. The remaining methods we will be doing in the next TFT. That means starting from interviews. Right? We will do the next TFT. Till then, keep revising, and we hope that you are enjoying the learning process and not simply going through monotonously. Don't do it. That is all for today. All the best and wish you a great journey.